afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audio Visual Services. And once again, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Ryan Finch.
Hello. It's good to be back. Was I here last week? I don't even remember if I was or wasn't.
Yes, you were here last week.
Wow, I just wanted to hear you say it.
Remember.
All the weeks have just blended into one.
They're merging together, but you were here and you were present and having a great conversation with last week's guest, Rose Caparatuno.
Oh, that's right.
And
we had a great
why
conversation.
were we talking to Rose? Because this week alone, the Westchester Women's Summit is happening this Friday, the 10th, and we are all looking forward to it. It's going to be a great gig. You guys can you can check that out when you're logging in and trying to register, because there's still time. Use the discount code TED like the bear 25.
You're not going to let that go, are you?
I am definitely not. Ted is such a cute little bear. He talks.
I don't think that's what the reference is, but that's okay.
Anyways, that was last week, but yet it's so this week, especially fitting on this 2023 International Women's Day. It's like we planned this.
I mean, if we planned this, we should have had a woman on the show.
Okay, so
we didn't plan this.
We're going to keep this week's conversation focused really on AV. But before we get started on that piece and video displays, Mr. Finch, tell them how they can find us.
Okay, you can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And while you're there, you should drop us a comment, be part of the show. You can ask us questions, and we will answer them live. And you should also like, comment, share, subscribe, all the above, because it is super helpful and much appreciated. And if you missed the show, you can find our whole video library, our visual discography, if you will, on YouTube. And, of course, you can see some bite-sized pieces on Facebook and on Instagram. Boom.
Wow. Videography.
Video discography.
Discography.
I feel like you just learned what discography was the other day.
I don't even know if you're making up real words. Like you're just throwing
a little twist on it.
Yeah, you put a twist on it, all right. But either way, listen, Mr. Finch, that is just pure excellence. Video discography.
Indeed.
Wow. Okay. Well, hey, listen, let's get to today's topic, which is video display options. Something that we talk about every single day. But maybe not all of our clients are familiar with their options. And, you know, there's a lot of people who are in new positions, new roles, new organizations after this regrouping after the pandemic. So it seems to make sense to come back to some of the basics for a little bit.
That does make sense.
Well,
should I take it away here? Or do you want to tee it up? Go ahead, you tee it up.
No, I think you should take it away. I mean, you're already halfway there.
I really just wanted to take a sip of water. Okay. So we're going to start. I was waiting for a drum roll. Didn't get a drum roll. We're going to start with
giving you a drum roll because you took my intro. So
I did. I'm sorry. We're going to start with actually, are we going to start with projection?
Yeah, we should start with projection.
Let's go. Let's do that. Okay. So projection is obviously a tried and true method for video display. We'll talk about the pros and cons, but first I want to talk about when it is a right fit or when it is the right fit.
Good start, Mr.
That's
Finch.
good. I figured you might like that. We like to break things down. Video discography. We like to break things down into bite-sized pieces, right?
I don't have that ready. Hold on.
No,
that's Instagram and Facebook. Oh, okay.
That is also true. 3 bite-sized pieces, right? 3 things to consider if deciding that projection is the right fit for your event.
Wow.
Number 1, space. Joe, do you know why that's number 1?
No, Ryan, tell me, why is space number 1?
All right. Well, to do something that looks like this or this or hold on, wait for it. Or this in the center, not the sides. Just realizing that we have both in there.
Way to go, pal.
We'll go back to this. Actually, that one's got both too. There we go. So to do something like this, you need space. You need a fair amount of space, not just for the screens themselves, but also for the projector, right? We need to be able to fill the screen. There needs to be some measure of distance that we will calculate ahead of time in order to fill a screen properly. And we don't want to overshoot it. We don't want to undershoot it. We want it to fit exactly. So you need a lot of space. And the way that we do that is by working out things like this, floor plans. So this will give us an accurate depiction of, and here's two different scenarios, how much space we need for projection. So if you can see here, I don't know how big this looks for you, Joe, but if you see here, this is a rear projection option. Rear projection obviously is a nice solution. It's clean. It's there's not a lot of stuff in the room, but if you can see, that's like 15, 20 feet behind the backdrop that we had. That eats up a fair amount of the room, right? No other kind of visual display is going to eat up 15 to 20 feet of your room. So it's just obviously something to consider. And then, of course, if we go to the front, well, now we have to start worrying about where the tables come up to the front. I had another kind of visual here to show the front elevation to see how much space we have before the people who are sitting up front start to have their heads washed in projection. And obviously nobody likes that, but that means that we need more space in front of the screens.
I mean, I could use a little wash up top. I mean,
Did you say that your hair is dirty? Is that what you're saying?
Let's continue.
Okay, there we go. So number one is space. Number two, to do something like this, right? Or this, we need to decide what kind of content that we're showing. And the reason that's important, Joe, do you want to take a stab at why it's important? I figured but I feel like I'm talking too much.
I mean, that's never stopped you before, number one. But no, Ryan, true. I have no idea why the content is
Thank
so
you
important
for playing along. Well, the content needs to fit, right? It needs to display at an appropriate size. All right, if we're just looking at some photos, if we're just looking at a slideshow of Nana's cats, or or maybe in a real sense, maybe all the children that your nonprofit or
that was a little creepy, by the way.
I'm sorry, I wanted to make it light. If we wanted to just show some simple photos or a montage or something like that, then obviously it doesn't need to be huge. You can kind of get a sense of what's going on screen in a picture from some distance without the screen being too large. But if there's a graph with numbers and facts and figures and little lines that hopefully go in this direction and not in this direction, if we want to see those details, you can't see it on a small screen. And so it's all relative, right? It's all about what is being displayed. And of course, how much, how many people are in the room and all that great stuff. But number two is going to be content. What are you showing? Joe, you ready for number three?
Okay. Hold on. I got to put number two on the screen.
Wow, you were late on that one.
I was adding something and then I took it away.
Okay. It's probably for the best.
I was live. So.
All right. Number three is probably the easiest to miss. It's probably the easiest one for someone to not consider.
Anticipation is building.
I'm doing that intentionally. Number three is light. How much light is in the room? Joe, what is projection?
Light.
There you go. Yeah, it's light. So if there's a lot of light and we're shining a light, you can't always see the details of said light from the projector. If we're outside and the sun is up, you're not going to see anything. The sun always wins. Or if you're in a room that has a lot of tall windows, you may need to consider, say, putting a backdrop or a pipe and drape behind the screen to prevent all that sunlight from bleeding through and washing out your image. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to spend money on projection and making your screen nice and big and showing your great graphs and figures if then the sunlight absolutely ruins it.
Hey, can you do projection outside, Ryan? I mean, that's what I really want to know.
It is possible. There are a couple of other factors. Environmental things come into play, like wind, because projection screens are a lot like sails. And if the wind blows,
you mean they could
just like that. Just like or fall on top of somebody, which we really try to avoid. So there are certain types of products that work better. There's big inflatable blow-up ones that even if they blew over wouldn't hurt anybody. Things like that you can certainly
actually, I've seen those things blow over as well.
Yeah, but at least they're plush and squishy and not made of metal.
Yeah, they're bigger and heavier than I think everybody thinks they are. So
That is true. Well, it also makes it hard to blow over. But also, yes, you can also do projection, and typically you just wait till the sun goes down, and then everybody's happy. But if it's a summer movie night that starts at 6 o'clock, you ain't gonna see nothing.
it sounds like a Kenny Chesney song, When the Sun Goes Down.
Sure.
All right, let's continue.
There you go. So, Joe, what about pros and cons? I mean, I feel like we covered kind of individually as we went, but what do you think? What do you think of pros and cons?
Look, I think the biggest pro for projection is just pure size.
Yeah.
The larger audiences, that's really the best thing to use. I mean, I've been at plenty of events where, we've done a lot of financial events where they have small numbers, and that is the only thing you're going to see those numbers on the screen with. And even then, there is a limit to what size font you can use. So please,
that is true.
Create content wisely.
That is true. And Joe, in this example here, you can see that the center screen is a TV monitor. That's about as big-ish as they go, and you can just see the size difference is obvious.
That is a big size difference. And those are not really big projection screens.
They're really not. They're just much bigger.
They're much bigger, which we will come to in our next chapter. But I think that's the number one biggest pro. I mean, there's certainly some other things. I mean, once you really get in and make adjustments, the colors really look good. The resolution's very good. There's also really wide screens, which we've used. It can go 3 or 4 times or 10 times the height. I mean, and they make a real impression. So, but I think projection is just the biggest. It's literally designed to do what's going on and why you're using it. It's number one presentation tool.
Absolutely. I wish we had Jim Marlowe to come in and comment on the buttering of the toast, because I heard something about buttering of the toast earlier and has it related to projection, but maybe it's a conversation for another time. Also, a great point from our very own Marissa Madonia: low ceilings, columns, hanging chandeliers, things that get in the way of projection. So that gets back to space and being in the right environment for it. And usually that's something you can tell, just walking into a new space for the first time, is whether or not it's going to be conducive to projection. If you got columns spaced out all through the room, probably not. If you got chandeliers that hang super low, maybe, but probably not. Lots of windows everywhere, probably not. So there you go. So those are the big three: space, content, light, and some pros and cons for projection.
Very, very good. And I would say we happen to have a lot of venues, especially catering halls. In general, they have a lot of light, and they're usually lower but bigger. And that doesn't honestly play that well with projection screens. So because they have very elaborate chandeliers that hang down, and there's a lot of people still. So you have to be kind of creative in that. That's where we're going to talk about some other options.
So Joe, if you were in a venue that maybe had a lot of light or some low chandeliers, or just wasn't really conducive to projection, what would you do?
Well, first of all, I'd make a phone call to corporate AV and be like,
shameless.
Hello.
That's shameless. Shameless plug.
Okay. All right. I would start looking at my other options. So in this particular case, I think we should go to video option number 2, which is going to be flat screen monitors. So flat screen monitors are really interesting because you can use them in spaces where you can't use projection. They're physically much smaller, and so you have a lot of flexibility. So, I mean, honestly, we can use them almost anywhere we go. There's really no issues with floor space. We're not projecting light or shooting light across a room. So we don't have that 15 feet or 20 feet that Ryan was showing in the picture when they were behind the stage setup. And we don't really have to worry about the tables, that if we're 80 feet and projecting from the back of the room, we don't really have that concern either. Because with projection, it's got to be straight across, right? TV doesn't have any of that. So we can put it almost anywhere. And where it's really helpful is kind of filling in spaces, overflows, lobbies, Any of these behind those columns, the infamous columns. We have one close by. There's a giant column and one ballroom close by. And we might as well install a TV there. I mean, because you have to put one every time you're in the room. But it's not big enough to put a projection screen. So that's an interesting dynamic. We can also turn them, right? You can go in the portrait mode or vertical. That's something you can do with projection, but you don't really see it that often. I also think they're incredibly bright. So if you were talking about those spaces that had a lot of windows, a TV screen can be very helpful, right? Look at all that light coming in over there behind, but yet you can read the TV. And I think that's really important. The colors are very bright, and due to the technology being the same essentially as your computer screen, the colors look the same for the most part. Whereas some projection, you have to make adjustments. I would say with the higher end projection, though, you're probably going to get the colors more accurate because some TVs can have some weird adjustments you got to make to them. They look a little clown-like, if you don't make adjustments, whereas projection never looks clown-like. So little things, but yeah, I like clown-like. I think is the professional term. I'm not sure.
It should be on a banner. I'm just saying.
I can't do both, Fish. Can't do both. Maybe if you stepped up to the plate and typed in clown-like, we could have had that one. Oh man, you're good. You were just pure excellence today. Unbelievable. I also do think that they're very accessible and they're easy to acquire, which is different than projection. Projection is very precise. So because of the nature of glass, it's like cameras. There's certain things that go with certain ones. If you're not going to match them up if you haven't pre-planned that. Whereas if I needed 2 TVs for an event tomorrow or 2 monitors for an event tomorrow, and we had rented out the 45 that we have, I could probably find 2 more. Fairly quick, fairly easy.
How about 6?
That looks pretty nice. I like that. I like the way you arrange those. Very nice. The accessibility is interesting because it's kind of got a double-edged sword with it too. The hardest part about monitors and TVs, and of course the difference between monitors and TVs are that TVs have a tuner, and some of our monitors don't actually have a tuner. They don't have speakers. Some do, some don't. Monitors are usually built to last longer, and you can leave them on longer times. If you think of hotels and museums and places where things are left on almost all the time, those are usually commercial and industrial monitors, whereas everyone at home has a TV. There's a little difference in the quality, but in general, they're very similar. So we'll just use them interchangeable. But the things that are most expensive on some of those are actually all that hardware. You had those poles that were holding them up, and they go in these giant cases, right? And those are the things that are actually more expensive. It increases the costs by like double or triple sometimes. So it's an interesting dynamic. But Ryan, these flat screen monitors, they're not a fit for everything.
No,
not for everything. So you made a comment about where, let me see if we got that other little image there. Because I thought projection was really best due to its size for large audiences. Well, TVs and monitors are much smaller. Do you have that graphic there, that quick little image?
This one?
Negative, sir.
I don't know what graphic you're talking about. Number 10.
Let me do it for you.
That's not 10.
Oh, young Finch. There we go. Stop touching things. There we go. So in general, the largest TV screen or flat screen monitor that we have is like a quarter of the size of a normal projection screen that we use. And I think I see you over there. Yeah. So that's it. Like the smallest projection screen we use is literally twice as big. And I think that becomes the number one point is they're just physically much smaller. So when we want to put things on screen in a room, let's call it image magnification or simulcast to put the presenter who's presenting on a screen, they're supposed to look larger than life.
Otherwise, you lose the mag part. It's not magged. It's not magnified.
When they're on a TV, they look smaller than life.
I know they do. That's true.
That's not necessarily a plus.
Although, when we have very wide rooms and the people in the far edges don't have a good vantage point to see the face of the person who's speaking, that is an exception.
Well, because it gives them something that they couldn't get otherwise. And that's
Right.
TVs have that flexibility that you can
Absolutely.
use them almost anywhere. You know, I would say that they're more delicate as well.
Oh, I wish I had the photo.
They don't really travel that well.
You can't drop them either.
Can't drop them. You can't, lift your head up into them. They tend to break, and that happens fairly frequently.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the other variable for us where sometimes it's not an effective tool is because we just did an event. We're in Manhattan, and Midtown Manhattan is a very common challenge. We couldn't fit anything larger into the elevator. They
Right.
travel in large cases. They're not flexible. They don't maneuver easily. And so we had to take them out of said case and then carry it. And that's not really very safe. For a delicate item, not a real safe process. But like I said, but there's a lot of ways that you can use them. And Ryan, you had a couple of really cool pictures where there was mixed between projection screens and flat screen monitors. That is an example right there, because it adds a different element to it, and it adds kind of a very high tech look when you're mixing different options.
Right. Well, and you have the ability to put, different content in different places, right? Like we see an example here. The center screen is different from the two outboards. Also, I love this, right? Projection in the middle, screens on the side. Projections on the side, screen in the middle.
That you just blew my mind.
I know. I didn't plan that. That's like serendipity right there.
Oh boy. Well, listen, let's keep this thing moving. There is a third option that is very common, and and it's a little different. The technology itself is a little different, and it's newer than the other two, and that's LED tiles. So I always tell people, think Times Square. Like when you're thinking LED, think Times Square, because all those, the images that you see there, that's all LED. And they're basically like puzzle pieces. They're small pieces that get built to be large. And that's kind of unique just by itself. But I think the first pro, if we're saying like what's good about them, is their brightness. They're significantly brighter. So that's a great example, because that's a projection screen with a projector to the left, and that's LED to the right. And there's a significant difference.
Oh yeah.
in how the colors sometimes look and the brightness. And the fact that you can see that's got a different shape to it entirely, which is because it's customizable. Whereas a projection screen really isn't customizable like that. That's pretty cool. Look at that Artie Dillon just hamming it up.
There he is.
It's pretty nice. Pretty nice. Now, LED is really one of the only things you can use outside. I know there are specialty things, but during the day, you're not going to have too many things you can use outside. LED is actually what you should be using. And there's specifically rated tiles to work outside because of water and moisture. But Ryan, you do a lot of graduations, don't you?
I do a fair share, and actually LED is a common solution for when we want to have video outside. A lot of time it's IMAG. We want to give everybody a good vantage point on the stage. People sitting in bleachers. Maybe you're on a football field, but yeah. So LED is a pretty common solution, and there's actually a way to speed up the process, and that is by having it pre-built. It's kind of like a giant TV screen.
And how does that work?
It does come in a giant case. Fortunately, the case has wheels that can go on the highway. Look at that.
There you go. Look at that.
So what you can see here,
right up.
I don't think you can see my mouse, obviously not, but you can see in the kind of black thing in the center is the stage, and then right behind that is a silver-looking trailer, and the trailer is actually what tows in the screen that is right above it. And so the screen literally, it just shows up, it pops up out of the trailer. We plug in our feed and, turn it on and we're done. Now, contrast that with how long it took to build something like this. And there's a stark difference. Obviously, what we're looking at here is building things in individual pieces. And, not everything has jagged edges, but little mini tiles that are put together and configured and cabled and wired together and then had to be, hung and, stacked on top of each other or, hung from the top down. So obviously a lot more time that goes into that versus this that just shows up and it pops up out of the trailer and it's good to go.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, I mean, 30 minutes versus, 6 or 7 hours is pretty substantial. But of course, look, you can't drive a truck into every place we go. It's not a fit.
That is correct.
But there's a lot of interesting things. You saw the different shapes. Okay, well, those can be built. They can look like a city skyline. They can be built kind of any way you want. But again, it always comes back to the content, which we'll discuss again in a second. But let's look at some, like, where would you use some of these LED tiles that we're talking about, Ryan?
Well, you can use them in a lot of different places. Honestly, it's a fit for environments that aren't a fit for projection, for starters, where you still need the size, right? You want to go bigger than a TV screen. In fact, if you didn't want to go bigger than a TV screen, then just bring a TV screen, because that would be a little bit easier, a monitor as we called it. But it's a fit for when you want to go bigger than a TV screen, but maybe you don't have the right environment for projection. So it could be a traditional event space, a ballroom, a hotel ballroom, a catering hall. It could be outside on a football field. You can really go anywhere where you have access to electrical power, and that kind of plays into what we're just about to talk about. You do need a little bit of space, but not quite the amount that you'd need for projection. You could do it in a tent. And actually, that reminds me of a photo that I forgot to pick up. We could do it in a tent. So the options are many in that regard.
Okay, I think where people probably see them the most, all those award shows that they see, it's very common in entertainment, very common in broadcast TV. Think of the sports announcers and their backdrops and the things that are in the front built into their set. But it's also, we've used it a lot just as the backdrop. So whereas many times we might put up drapery, we might put up branding. Well, this is a pretty big digital branding material. And it's, again, you just got to build the content out for it and get that part right. But it looks pretty awesome. I don't know if you have any pictures of that, but if not, then we'll come to it
what
another
exactly?
day. Of using it as a backdrop.
No.
All right, I mean, you failed, but no big deal.
I didn't do great on this one. I do have more pictures, though. You can also see a stark difference in contrast, right? So the way that black, for instance, will appear is much blacker than in a projection screen. Because if you think about it, you can't really project black light. You can't project the absence of light, because projection is, that's right, it's light. So in this case, you can see a pretty good example of what kind of contrast you're working with on an LED screen as opposed to projection, which I don't have a great side-by-side comparison, but you'll have to take my word for it because I don't have anything else to show.
Well, that's okay. I can tell you about that particular event right there. With all those chandeliers, you go back to the picture before that.
Oh yeah, there you go.
They're literally everywhere. So and it was a very large room. They had a crowd of 500 people, so there's just no way to fit screens and make it all work. So, and TVs would have looked very small. So that's how we ended up with LED screens, and we built them from the ground up, which makes it, a little bit easier. It's not a theater where you can hang things, or, a big concert frame structure that you can hang things. So this was, they're flexible. You can build them. But that's a good picture. I like the corporate AV logo on there. That was nice.
I figured you would.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
So I didn't blow it entirely, just like a little.
No,
just halfway.
Well, listen, any challenges, any cons?
Oh yeah.
We'll say to LED tiles.
Well, look, nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect, and certainly not in this case. Con number one is you actually need a fair amount of electrical power, right? So if you are in an older event space, or especially when you are outside, you got to consider that you do need a significant generator. But going back to older event spaces, sometimes it's tough to get more power than is currently available in wall outlets, and sometimes that's just not enough. So that becomes the first place that you have to look to see if you can actually move forward with that, is making sure that you have enough power to do it. It also, to Joe's point, contrary to something that literally shows up and pops out of a can, these need to be built in pieces, as we said, and then in some cases hung from truss, or built from the ground, or having them ground supported, or sometimes we're hanging them. But you're taking a whole bunch of tiles. It could be 60 tiles for 2 screens, and that wouldn't even be that much. And you're having to piece them all together, so it takes a lot of time. And so if you only have a couple of hours of setup time, it is not going to happen. And so in that case, you need to make sure that wherever you're contracted your event, that you do have enough time for setup. Now that goes for basically everything that we do, but in this case in particular, it will take significantly longer than the other 2 options for projection and monitors.
Joe, how about a very good point?
You alluded to this already. Do you want to talk about another con having to do with what is on the screen?
I do. In general, the shape of the LED tiles, because they're built in a faraway land. Let's start like that, and they're usually done in millimeters, and so they're like 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet is kind of a normal size. By the time you piece them together, you do not have an exact 16:9 image that you do on a TV, a monitor, or on a projection screen. So it is not this perfect rectangle that Ryan is weirdly highlighting. This goes back to the cats, I think, reference, but it's not that perfect shape. So it has to be adjusted no matter what. And there's also things that don't really look great on it, because you're looking at little tiny dots. You have to be a certain distance away. And that doesn't work a lot if you're showing, fine numbers and Excel spreadsheets and financials. That may not be your best option for that.
Right. Well, the key is you need to make sure it's large enough. So the interesting thing about resolution there is that the resolution of an LED screen is very, very much finite, right? It's not as scalable. Just like Joe said, those dots are where they are, and you can't have more of them. So just like a mosaic, right? It may not look like much if you're standing up close, but if you take, a few steps back, maybe more, maybe more step. There you go. See, if you back up a lot, you'll see the image just fine. It'll be clear. It'll be sharp.
I think I look better like this.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
There you go. So yeah, so there's got to be some distance from the audience to the screen, and that also dictates, or should I say, is dictated by what type of LED you're using.
Well, one of the certain disadvantages to using LED is the cost point is higher. I don't think there's a question about that. They're even more delicate, to be honest. They don't travel fantastically well, even though there's been improvements on that every single day.
You can't drop those either.
No, dropping's never good.
But you can't even look at them wrong.
They also get pretty heavy. Yeah. Because if you were building something that was going to be the size of a big projection screen, our largest screen is 12 feet high by 21 feet wide. If you were building something like that, it's going to be pretty heavy. It's probably going to be, thousands of pounds at that point. So that's, you just have to be aware of what you're doing. Again, there are things that are exact to it, but the cost of actually building it and designing it and putting it all together, it's more expensive than the other 2 options.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's well worth it. And other times it's not. I think that's one thing that, we see a fair amount is, it is new and it is exciting. And some groups want to jump for the new and exciting, the new shiny toy, if you will. But there's many instances where it's not better. and it's not the right fit, it doesn't quite, it's not quite justifiable in terms of what the added expense is. And then, of course, there's other times where, it's really the best tool for the job. And unfortunately, the budget's not there for it. So, just things to consider as you're trying to decide what video display option you're going with. Look at that.
That was impressive. I mean, look, they're all good, right? They're all good. It's just a matter of consulting with your trusted advisor and figuring out what's the best decision for your event at that time. So either way, Ryan, it's time for us to wrap this thing up.
Okay, good.
And, this was a pleasure hanging out and talking with you from a distance. But either way, listen, everybody, thank you very much for your time. Don't forget about the Westchester Women's Summit this Friday. Discount code TED, like the bear, 25. You can sign into virtualmeetinghub.com. Mr. Finch, tell them how they can find us next time.
Okay, you can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube Live. You can do that every Wednesday at 1 p.m. You can drop us a comment, be part of the show, ask your questions. We'll answer them live. And you should also like, comment, share, subscribe, all the above. Super helpful, much appreciated. And if you missed the show, go back and check out our video discography on YouTube. And you can also see little bite-sized pieces, the shark bites, on Facebook and on Instagram. Boom.
Wow. Video discography. That's good stuff. Good stuff, Mr. Finch. Well, nice job today. Listen, everyone, if you need to know more about your video display options, just give us a call. Give your trusted advisor a call. Either way, we're here to help. Ryan, we're wrapping up. I got to go. Can't stand here and talk to you all day. So I'm going to let you close out first one more time.
Okay. Well, I'm going to come up with something incredibly original that's never been done in any sort of media, film, TV, nothing. Here it comes. You ready? That's all, folks.
Wow. Okay, Porky the Pig. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao. Thank you, everyone. Good luck. We'll talk to you later.
Who's Porky the Pig?
Go ahead. Go ahead.